At the height of his power, one man quietly controlled the financial fate of entire countries. Governments depended on him. Banks trusted him. Investors worshipped him. His companies stretched across Europe and beyond, moving billions through paper contracts, secret deals, and promises no one fully understood. He wasn't a tech founder. He wasn't a banker. He wasn't a politician. Yet for years, he held more influence than all three combined. His name was Ivar Kreuger, and long before Silicon Valley, long before crypto, long before modern startups, he built what may be the first truly global financial illusion. This is not just a story about fraud. It's about how intelligence, ambition, and desperation combined to create a system so convincing that even the most powerful institutions in the world suspended disbelief. And by the end, you'll understand why almost every modern financial scandal still follows the same blueprint Kreuger perfected nearly a century ago. Kreuger rose during a moment of chaos. Europe after World War I was financially broken. Governments were desperate for money. Currencies were unstable. Infrastructure was damaged. Debt was everywhere. Into this vacuum stepped a quiet, mathematically gifted Swedish engineer with a radical offer. He wouldn't just lend money, he would solve national problems. In exchange for massive loans, countries would grant him monopolies over match production and sales. Matches may sound trivial, but at the time, they were essential. Every household used them. They were a guaranteed source of steady revenue. A perfect monopoly product. This was the genius of Kreuger's system. It looked boring. It looked stable. It looked saving. While others chased speculation, he built a narrative of discipline, structure, and reliability. Governments signed exclusive deals. Investors saw predictable income. Banks saw low risk. And soon, Kreuger controlled match monopolies in dozens of countries. His empire expanded across Europe, Asia, and parts of the Americas. On paper, he became one of the richest men alive. But the real innovation wasn't matches, it was finance. Kreuger created a labyrinth of holding companies, shell entities, cross-ownership structures, and private contracts so complex that almost no one fully understood them. His empire spanned hundreds of corporations, many of them owning shares in each other. Money moved across borders quietly. Debts were rolled forward. Profits were reclassified. Losses were buried. Financial statements were carefully engineered to show stability even when cash was running dangerously low. To investors, everything looked flawless. Bonds paid on time. Dividends arrived. Governments backed the deals. Auditors rarely questioned anything. And when questions did arise, Kreuger's reputation silenced them. He was seen as a financial architect, a man too sophisticated to be reckless. That perception became his greatest asset. Behind the scenes, however, the system was under constant strain. The monopolies did not generate enough cash to support the massive obligations Kreuger had taken on. Loans were being used to pay older loans. New bond issues filled holes in old balance sheets. Documents were quietly altered. Signatures were forged. Numbers were adjusted just enough to maintain confidence. What looked like a stable empire was, in reality, a fragile web held together by trust and timing. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because nothing about this part feels foreign. Investors wanted safe returns during uncertain times. Governments wanted easy money without political backlash. Banks wanted fees. Everyone benefited from believing the story. And so they did. Kreuger became known as the Match King. Newspapers praised his genius. Financial elites defended him. His empire was treated as a pillar of modern capitalism. Few people asked how a single man could outmaneuver entire financial systems. Fewer still wanted to know the answer. Then came the global shock. The Great Depression shattered confidence everywhere. Credit tightened. Investors demanded transparency. Governments needed real numbers, not promises. The system that had quietly sustained Kreuger for years suddenly faced scrutiny it was never designed to survive. As pressure mounted, cracks began to surface. Auditors struggled to reconcile accounts. Missing documentation appeared. Some assets couldn't be verified. Others didn't exist at all. Debt levels were far higher than disclosed. The elegant structure started collapsing under its own weight. Behind closed doors, Kreuger scrambled to keep control. He negotiated frantically with banks. He tried to secure emergency funding. He moved papers, delayed disclosures, and attempted to stabilize a structure that was already falling apart. But the illusion required constant expansion, and expansion was no longer possible. In 1932, the story reached its abrupt end. Ivar Kreuger was found dead in his Paris apartment, officially ruled a suicide, though surrounded by controversy that persists to this day. Within hours, markets panicked. His companies collapsed. Bonds became nearly worthless. Investors lost billions. Governments scrambled to understand what they had actually signed. The empire disintegrated faster than anyone believed possible. What investigators uncovered afterward shocked the financial world. Massive falsification of accounts, forged securities, invented profits, entire layers of the business that existed only on paper, the most sophisticated fraud of its time, hidden in plain sight. But here's the part that matters most today. Kreuger did not succeed because people were stupid. He succeeded because the system rewarded confidence, scale, and narrative over verification. He spoke the language of stability. He looked like order in a chaotic world, and that made people suspend skepticism. This pattern didn't die with him. It evolved. Replace match monopolies with software platforms. Replace bonds with venture capital. Replace paper ledgers with dashboards. The mechanics change, but the psychology doesn't. Investors still chase certainty. Institutions still outsource skepticism. Founders are still rewarded for storytelling, and complexity still shields deception. The uncomfortable truth is that Kreuger wasn't an anomaly. He was a prototype. He showed how financial empires can be built not on products, but on perception. How trust can be manufactured. How credibility can substitute for proof. And how entire systems can participate in sustaining a lie because exposing it would hurt too many people at once. That's why this story still matters. Not as history, but as a warning. Because somewhere right now, another structure is growing. Another balance sheet looks perfect. Another founder is being celebrated. Another narrative feels too elegant to question. And once enough people believe, the truth becomes optional. The lesson of Ivar Kreuger isn't that fraud exists. It's that fraud thrives when it looks boring, respectable, and mathematically sound. When it speaks in the language of institutions, when it promises stability in uncertain times, when it gives everyone just enough reason not to look too closely, and when it finally collapses, people will say the same thing they said in 1932. How did no one see this coming? Because the most dangerous lies aren't outrageous. They're reasonable. They're well-dressed. They pay on time. And for a while, they work.